really understanding their stories and understanding, where did this all begin for you? Why did you start eating this way? What are you trying to accomplish? Like, what is the need that you are trying to meet through doing these behaviors and trying to change your body in this way, maybe? And that is even a deeper level. I had a client who came, who worked so hard, and she and I just had a wonderful time working together. And when she left, she wrote me a note and she said, Kristen, you fed my body, but you also fed my soul. There's no higher compliment than that in my field, you know, to really touch someone at a soul level and to change their life.
Welcome to the Fear No Food podcast, health and nutrition stuff for us normal people.
All right, well, welcome back to another episode of the Fear No Food podcast. Yes. I have a close friend, Kristen Bunger here, is a registered dietitian and practitioner at Body and Soul Counseling. And I'm really excited. One, because I think the emotional side of like food and body image is something that oftentimes is outside of our scope here. So I'm really excited for our listeners to learn from you there. And because there's some things that I probably disagree with you on, and I'm ready to like get into the ring here. Let's go. Got you. But let's start. So give us a little bit of your background. So You're a registered dietitian. What the heck does that mean? And then how did Body and Soul come about?
Yeah. So a registered dietitian just means I have a degree in nutrition. So I went to Stanford University and got a bachelor's of science, and then continued my education at UAB and got a master's in clinical nutrition and did my dietetic internship. So we have to practice at all different levels and in all different facilities in order to sit for our board certified test. And so we are commissioned by the Dietetic Registration Commission. And that just means that I have education in lots of different areas of nutrition. Okay. And I had to prove myself.
Yeah. And despite that education, you still let your husband, who's a good friend of mine, eat like a 12-year-old boy.
Let is a strong word, Dan.
Yeah.
You know better. Yes, he's a man.
He makes his own decisions.
Exactly.
Tell us a little bit about kind of how you got into, because that's like the nuts and bolts of like macros and micronutrients and all of that. Like, what was the journey like to be really, I mean, are you focusing on that as much now, or is it more on?
It's more on disordered eating and eating disorders and yo-yo dieting and body image issues. And when I was in school, I really liked everything that I did in my internship, but I didn't love anything until my last year of graduate school when I did, I was at UAB and I did an adolescent, I was in adolescent health. That was my focus in graduate school. And I did a eating disorder clinic at Alabama Children's. And that's when I was like, this is so fascinating because it combined psychology and a spiritual aspect and what I had learned. And so my mentor, who was very wise at UAB, Dr. Bonnie Spear, said, you should go check out Remuda Ranch. I think they have some openings. And I was a New Orleans girl. I'd never been anywhere past the middle of Texas. And I was like, I can't go to Arizona. I don't know anybody out there. But I applied for the job and they hired me. And I just said, I have to go see, because I think this is what I'm called to do. And so from there, I've really been set up to do what I do now at Body and Soul Nutrition Counseling. And that is just to incorporate what I know from nutrition science, the spiritual aspect of it, the psychological aspect of it, and just kind of combining all three together.
What does that typically look like for you in your practice?
Yeah. So it really is story is one of my favorite things. So understanding people's story, because anytime anybody comes to me and tells me these are my behaviors, this is what I'm struggling with, and then I start asking questions as to like, when did this start? What are some of your beliefs about your body? How does your day look like? And when do you get triggered? And what foods do you binge on? And what foods do you restrict? At the end of every nutrition assessment, I look at them and I go, gosh, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so understanding the psychology behind it, understanding their journey, and just what they believe and why, because it's really about, as you know, it's about why we do what we do. And when we can get to the root issue, then we can really make some effective changes.
I love that. Yeah. We talk a lot about, like, I think one of the more overlooked things in weight loss is like, it's not just like, depriving yourself or cutting calories and losing weight. It's like, how do we do we take a more balanced approach to fixing the metabolism, getting your body the nutrition that it needs? But I think that, like, honestly, as we're talking about this and as I reflect on, I mean, I've sat with over 10,000 people on their first visit. I think the psychological side of things, like between the ears, is probably also the most overlooked thing in weight loss as well.
Understanding the behavior.
And how does that typically show? Like, what do you see in your practice, or what have you seen? How does that show up? Like, or is that, I guess, is it when somebody says, "Oh, I have an eating disorder or disordered eating," like that seems pretty broad. What does that mean?
Well, you have to ask, right? That's where the story comes in. And it's like, okay, what does that look like for you? Because sitting with so many people too, it's different every time. And the why behind it is a little bit different every time. And so really understanding their stories and understanding, where did this all begin for you? Why did you start eating this way? What are you trying to accomplish? Like, what is the need that you are trying to meet through doing these behaviors and trying to change your body in this way, maybe? And that is even a deeper level, because when you can understand, or as a dietitian, when I can understand what they actually really need, then I can go, okay, this behavior is accomplishing that to some degree, but you're sitting in my office because it's not fully working for you anymore. So how can we not shame the need? Because maybe the need is for confidence. Maybe it's for control. Maybe it's to be praised. Maybe it's to have approval of someone that they love. Those needs are so good, right? The needs are good. And we don't ever want to shame those or say, well, you shouldn't have that need, because
and we hear that a lot, where it's like people almost like they hedge when they're like, well, it's kind of vanity, but this is when it's like, well, there's something deeper there that is legitimate. And like, how do we validate that?
Exactly.
That's like, that's okay if you want to look a certain way in a bikini.
It's not wrong to want those things, but it's also, are there other ways that you can accomplish that? Are there more balanced ways? Are there more healthy ways that you can accomplish getting these needs met? And oftentimes there are.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, I want you to know that it is not free. Well, you're watching it for free or listening to it for free, but we have a gentleman's agreement here at the Fear No Food podcast. We put a lot of work into this podcast, and all we would ask in return is that you like and subscribe on whatever podcast player that you're listening on, or if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. There's no way that I'm going to be able to check to see if you did. That's why it's the gentleman's agreement. Really appreciate if you took the moment to click that link and subscribe.
How do you feel about some of these medications? Are you seeing that in your practice, like the GLP-1 medications?
Yeah, I think I'm seeing it to some degree. I don't have a lot of clients on them, honestly, because the people that come see me don't necessarily want to take them, but a lot of them have considered it and have asked me about it. And I think, you and I have talked about this, and there's probably a small percentage of people that would really benefit from some of these medications. And there's a larger percent of people that don't have any business being on these medications, because we know that there are a lot of side effects, and we don't even know how deeply those side effects are going to be detected in the future. So I usually tell people, this is my clinical perspective. Obviously, you do what you have to do for yourself. You do what you think is necessary for yourself. But we're seeing a lot of bone loss and a lot of muscle loss from taking these medications, and that's very worrisome for overall metabolic health.
Yeah. Your tagline is feeding the body, nourishing the soul. I think of this other author that I like, who doesn't really talk much about nutrition, but he talks about how the body informs the spirit. What is that? What does that mean?
The body informs the spirit.
Or, feeding the body and you're nourishing your soul.
Sure.
Can you dive into a little bit more of that?
It's taking the science of nutrition and what we do know about the body and educating, right? This is what it looks like to really feed your body well. This is what your body is probably wanting and needing. And the soul part of it, the mind, the will, the emotions, is really understanding, okay, so we all have thoughts that lead to emotions that lead to behaviors. And so if you have thoughts, like if you get up in the morning and you say, I absolutely hate my body, I look disgusting, that's going to lead to some pretty difficult emotions, which is probably going to lead to some maybe restrictive behaviors in the morning. Like, let's see how long I can go without eating, right? Or let's see how little I can eat. And then that might lead to overeating at night. And you get kind of stuck in this cycle because you wake up the next morning and you still hate your body, right? And so it's really understanding, okay, this is what scientifically we know about the body. This is how we were created. This is what works best for most people, or really understanding that particular person, what might work best for them. And then really helping them break down. That's what we call a behavior chain analysis, right? So really helping them break down, okay, what thoughts are you having that are leading to these emotions and these behaviors? And where can we insert some truth into that, right? Not to say like, oh, I love my body when you really don't love your body, but to say, I don't love my body right now, but I really do want to take care of it. Or I really do want to explore what it would look like to be more kind to myself. So what does kindness look like in regards to nutrition science? What would it look like to have a breakfast that maybe isn't, maybe not even a full breakfast, right? But what would it look like to get up and have a horrible body image day, but still eat like a small bowl of yogurt with berries? Maybe it's not a full breakfast, but it's just taking these steps to eventually get to the place where nutritionally you are honoring what your body actually needs while saying, I'm having a really hard time doing that.
That's like, I love that, because I think what is off-putting to some people about the like body positivity movement is it just feels so shallow. Of just like, I just need to get up and just will myself to like love my body no matter what. And it's like, but that you have such a deeper kind of perspective on that of just like, yeah, you might, like, you don't have to lie to yourself if you're not, but how can you still make decisions that honor and move you towards that future glory self,
while also doing the inner work of, why do I hate myself? Like, what in my story caused me to feel like I have to look a certain way in order to be worthy of love?
Do you find any patterns of like, no, it's the parents. It's always the parents, but like, is there any
You can always blame your mom.
Yeah, thanks, mom. Do you, from, your work anecdotally, or does research kind of show like, hey, like our body image neuroses or issues tend to stem from a certain sphere of culture or a certain person or past or certain traumas, or is it all mixed bag?
There's definitely some similarities in, in how we form attachment. Attachment is a big one, right? When we think about our early life and how our parents or our primary caretakers were the ones that helped us kind of form all of these opinions and all of these beliefs and our core beliefs. And I think parents, I think grandparents are a big one too. Teachers, coaches, friends. One of the biggest red flags that I find, especially if I am seeing an adolescent or a young adult, and I ask them in the nutrition assessment, like, tell me who is your greatest support. And they're like, my friend Sarah. And I'm like, where's your mom? Like, I just get like so fired up when parents don't show up, right, for their kids, or when they're struggling so much in their own bodies, when they're struggling so much with their own body image. I'm working with a teenager right now who came to me, she's doing okay, but really her parents are the ones that I need to be seeing, because they have such strong fat bias and they have such strong beliefs that she needs to be eating a certain way, or she's eating too much. And I can't really get to her because I can't really get to them.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah. So often we'll have somebody who's like, hey, do you work with adolescents? And it's like rarely, in some cases, more than half the time, it's like I'm doing the consultation with the parents and like I'm making sure that their head's right and be like, hey, we're doing this to be healthy. Like how is this going? Because there's been some just icky things where I'm like, you guys need, like, this is not healthy for you to be treating your daughter this way, or your son, like, having these expectations on them. It makes me think of an article I read recently, and I can't remember if it was the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, but it was this mom seeing how her demons around her body image were playing out with her daughter, how she was having success with Ozempic, and now, wondering, now that it's approved for 12-year-olds, should my daughter also be on this, because it's helping me get rid of this quote unquote food noise in my head and helping me with these things, and this kind of ethical struggle of like, do I put my daughter, who's not even at puberty yet, on this thing? And that was kind of the whole purpose of, to kind of be provocative in this article. And it is just interesting, like how we can pass these things down to, to our kids. In that vein, like as a mom, how do you think about that? Because I'm sure you wrestle with some of your own stuff, as we all do. Like, are you consciously thinking about like, okay, how I talk about my body or how I approach food and talk about food in front of my kids is going to dictate how they
Yeah, Adam Young is a therapist who has a wonderful podcast called The Place We Find Ourselves, and he talks a lot about story work. And I have felt, I have really appreciated his perspective on, like, if you want to be a good parent, you have to do your own work. You have to do your own story work. You have to figure out the why behind your behaviors in every area that are not going well, right? Yeah. And so, as a parent, and what I encourage every parent to do is you have to figure out what your issues are around food. And when you figure that out, that just naturally comes out in the way that you behave, in the way that you talk, in the way that you look at yourself, because they're always watching us. And they don't understand, as children, especially young children. I have 2 little boys who are 5 and 6. They're constantly looking at my husband and I as, well, like, they don't understand that they're different people, that they're separate people. They see themselves as an extension of us. And so if I demoralize my body, if I talk about food in a way that isn't respectful or neutral, they're going to take that on and they're going to think that's what I should do. Right. And so I do think in every aspect, if I can face my demons, as you say, and if I can better myself and come in alignment with the truth, that will be passed on to them.
Yeah, that's good. Riffing on this idea of, like, food noise and like that article, and that's, I think, something that the marketing machine behind the, like, GLP-1 drugs is really latching onto, of just like, oh, it reduces this food noise. Yeah. What does food noise mean to you? Because I think I have an idea for us, and we've talked to Lee, who's one of our nutritionists here, and she's like, she feels like that's just one of those areas where it's like, it's just one of these non-scale victories. It's like, as you kind of get control and start to get momentum, and you see the benefits of an anti-inflammatory diet, yada, 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 that stuff starts to take care of itself, and you don't, but what does that look like for you, or for in your practice?
So what I think of food noise is probably different than what the food noise of, like, the GLP world is. What I think of food noise is 2 things. It's the biological urge to eat that people are not meeting, that they're trying to suppress with medications. Right. And that's why the food noise goes away, is because the hunger goes away. Right. So the biological urge to eat, which is God-given, it's like, it's hardwired. Your body's designed to say, like, hey, I'm hungry. Exactly. It's a survival mechanism, and it's good. It's a gift. It's being suppressed. And so that food noise is actually not noise. It's just, it's a survival tactic. Right. And so, but I think from my perspective and what I do, not using medications, is we use food, right? Instead of suppressing it, we meet the need, right? So the me doesn't go away. It just becomes a lot less loud. So you meet the need with just, and again, biological urge. So whatever is safest. If I have a client who comes to me and is like, I'm not eating enough, and I have all sorts of food fears, and I have all sorts of foods that are off limits to me, I never go, okay, well, the things that you're scared of is what we need to do first, right? I say, what are the things that you are eating that are not very scary to you? What are the foods that are safest to you? And then we work our way up slowly. But
what would that typically look like for somebody? Like, is that like a specific comfort food, or they're like, oh, this, like, health food is safe because I've labeled it as health food?
So I actually use a hierarchy of food fears. And so we just draw out a triangle. I have a triangle.
So did I see that in the book?
Yeah. Yep. That's in the book. Yeah. And there's 5 different levels. It's like anxiety level 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 5 to 6, all the way up to 9 to 10. And we just put, sometimes it's like non-fat, Greek yogurt, non-fat cottage cheese.
So you start categorizing the foods based on your anxiety levels.
Exactly. Ooh. Yeah. And it's
I want to do this.
It's by each client. So each client is very different. Some people will have traditional, like, fear foods at the bottom. They just feel more comfortable with those things for whatever reason. Right. But yeah, usually at the top, it's like ice cream and pizza and hamburgers and things like that.
That's high anxiety.
That are high anxiety, that are listed as, these are bad foods that I shouldn't be eating ever. Right. And so what I say is, the first thing we have to do is just get you eating. We just you just need to eat. I don't care what you like. Just eat what's safe. But you need to eat consistently, and you need to eat enough. And I give them guidelines about what enoughness might be around that, until they get to an intuitive place where they can decide that. Right. And then we go from there. and just to support quality of life. And some people, Dan, never go to the top of their hierarchy, and they never get comfortable with, because they don't want to, not because it's not possible, right? But like my teenager that I referenced earlier, I told her one day, I said, I want you to be able to go to In-N-Out with all your friends and just eat a burger and fries if you want to. Like, that's an important part of just being alive, right?
Being a teenager.
I want you to be able to go to a birthday party, and if a piece of cake looks really good, I want you to be able to have it. And know,
you told me once when we were over for dinner, you were like, I was like, I think I might want seconds of, I don't know, whatever dessert you'd made. And you're like, give yourself permission to go have that, or give yourself permission to not. And I'm like, yeah. And I literally have that dialogue with myself all the time where I'm like, I'm going to give myself permission to not have that, or I'm going to give myself permission. I'm not going to like, be like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Cause I think I had gotten to a place where I'm like, oh, I know that wasn't the best. So that was really impactful for me.
Good.
Yeah. Okay. So back to In-N-Out. Okay.
Yeah. So the hierarchy of food fears is like one of my favorite tools that I use, because it really does create a sense of curiosity where there has been a lot of judgment and a lot of unrest. So the point of the book that I wrote and the point of my work, I feel like, is to lead people on this path of peace. Right?
Yeah.
I want everyone to leave my practice having peace with food, movement, rest, and body image. And really the way that we do that is by surrender, right? And letting go and giving over, but also just by very strategically saying, what are the things that you are at peace with right now? Let's eat those first. And then what happens is when they don't feel as much food noise, right? They're biologically not like constantly thinking about food. They can go, I wonder what it would be like to maybe eat this too. And it's this every single time. And I don't say like, and don't worry, you're going to get really curious about other foods. But every single time it's like, there's a level of boredom that kind of comes with like the safe foods. And there's a level of like fun, peaceful curiosity that comes. And very naturally, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to tell you what I tried this week. And I'm like, what?
That's like our reintroduction phase. It's like, okay. And it's like, I'm sitting over the fifth person who's like, I reintroduced this and it was amazing. And you're like, And
there's peace, right? And it wasn't this like huge struggle, like I shouldn't have had that, or I overate on it. I'm like, no, because you had breakfast this morning, right? Yeah. So it's really fun to see people really embrace peace and move up in the hierarchy. So
I'd like to get into the book in just a second, but there's something we talked about around this like food noise that I don't want to get off of yet. So one place where my mind goes, because I love everything you just said though, but is like, what if your biology's been hijacked? Like what if your like satiety and hunger hormones are completely out of whack? Like how do you approach the kind of physiological side of like that, where it's like, my body isn't hungry when it should be, and it's hungry at times when it probably shouldn't be. Where do we start?
So we start with consistency, and I will tell my clients every time, like, this is only a temporary, like if they say I'm just not hungry in the morning, I'm not hungry until like 2 p.m. I'm like, well, then let's start eating at 2 p.m. Like if you're only eating dinner and binging at night, then let's eat at 2:30 and let's have a snack. Like when you start getting hungry, and then what happens is the metabolism is like, she ate a snack. Well, maybe she could eat lunch, right? And then so we work backwards until breakfast is like,
and your body starts to feel hungry when it's designed to.
I always tell them they're not lost, they're not broken, they're just hidden, and we have to like escort them back out into the light. So it really is really fun to see that happen.
In the book, you take a pretty big swing at intermittent fasting, which is a tool we use. It's one that recently we've evolved our philosophy on. Like we feel like there are some digestive benefits. We're not really using it from a calorie restriction standpoint or kind of restricting the window. But it's one of those ones that we're now like, hey, if you don't like this, guess what? We don't have to do it. And many of our folks are like, I actually had a call with a gal who's reading the book. She's like wanted a consultation. She's like, I'm doing great. I'm feeling amazing. I feel like I'm back to my pre-pregnancy weight. This is amazing. She's like, I love breakfast. I'm like, great. Keep eating breakfast. And like, she's like, I increased my protein. I'm like, great. You should do that. You're intuitively eating. But I don't know where I was going with that other than.
I think intermittent fasting can be beneficial for some people.
That was it. Is like, I find that it can be helpful for me sometimes, but I've found that for me personally, and some of our members love it, and they love starting at 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock. And they're like, I always thought I had to have cereal right out the gate. I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe you do, maybe you don't. For me, I find that if I don't, my body I'm basically like suppressing this like biological need for fuel. And then I get to a point in my day where I'm like, yeah, it's 3:00 and I'm kind of getting hungry when I know that I've basically suppressed it through not eating and maybe a little bit of coffee or decaf and then
adrenaline from work and all the things.
Right. Yeah. And then it's like, I just know it's not not optimal for me. And it can actually be a tool that's more harmful.
I think some people are naturally intermittent fasters.
Yeah.
Like, I think some people just naturally, at the most intuitive, basic level, are like, Kristen, I'm just not hungry until like 9:30. Yeah. And they don't eat, past 6:30 or 7, just very naturally. And so I did take a pretty big swing at it because it's a part of our diet culture. It's used kind of as a blanket statement, right?
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh. Yes. So everybody should be doing this. 18-16 or 8-6. Like, it's like, okay, dude.
And I also wrote the book for people who are probably struggling more mentally than some of the people that come to see you. And I wanted to have a tool in hand for people who maybe aren't ready to come to nutrition counseling, can't afford nutritional counseling, but need some help. Right. Yeah. So I took a pretty big swing at it for those reasons. But I have had some clients and even some colleagues, like I was talking to a colleague of mine, she's like, I don't think I really do eat breakfast until like 9 or 9:30. So am I an intermittent faster? And she does what I do. So so we were kind of laughing about that. So I think it can be helpful and natural for some people to tend to eat that way. Yeah. And also for a lot of people on most days of the week, it would probably suppress appetite that would help them optimally operate every day.
Yeah. What I found is that it's like among our members and myself is like when you're really listening, you know which days your body wants something and you know which days where you're like, I'm ready. I'm not going to roll it. And don't get confused with like the busyness being like, I'm not hungry. Because I think like if I've got something out the gate right at 8 a.m. and I'm trying to get out and the girls are up and like, it's like, I'm just wanting to get out the door. Sure. I probably was hungry, but I was just so distracted and not at peace, like you talked about. So let's talk about this book because it's a beautiful book. There's a couple of things I would definitely want to specifically talk about. And so I'm going to say it now just so we can make sure is the body image spectrum was really interesting to me. But talk to me about where did this book come from? So it's called Feed My Soul, published by, who was your publisher again? Westbow. You can get it at bookstores.
Amazon, anywhere online. Yeah.
What prompted the book?
So about 12 or 13 years ago, I was working in my first job as a little baby dietitian, and it was like
you were the baby. You were calling yourself a baby, or you were working with babies?
No, I was the baby. Okay, I was so green.
So but babies had to have dietitians. They just get breast milk.
No, I was the baby dietitian. Yeah. But I loved that job so much. It was such a foundational time for me. And I had a client who came who worked so hard, and she and I just had a wonderful time working together. And when she left, she wrote me a note and she said, Kristen, you fed my body, but you also fed my soul. And there's no higher compliment than that in my field, to really touch someone at a soul level and to change their life. And when she left, she did really well, and it was just a really fun success story. But I was in prayer after that, like right after that. And I was so touched by that. And I felt like I was supposed to write a book and call it Feed My Soul. So it didn't happen for a long time, but when it did happen, I knew that was going to be the name of the book. Yeah.
And walk me through kind of what's the premise of the book. So Feed My Soul, finding true peace with food, movement, rest, and body image.
Yeah. So I have several different parts, and it basically just talks about, okay, what does it look like to actually have peace with food? I
will jump in. I loved when I got into this, I'm like, kind of wish we would have done something like this. I love that you just had these different parts and then had chapter 1 through 5, chapter 1 through 5, and the different parts. Yeah. You can kind of like take it like food pun, like a buffet and just be like, all right, let's talk about like, I don't think my eating's disordered, so I'm probably going to skip that part, but like went right to the body image because like there's been times where I used to be like, I'm a skinny fat loser, I need to hit the gym more, and be like, that's probably not healthy.
Nice. That's not nice.
And I'm half kidding, but now I'm saying it out loud and my daughter's like, what's a skinny fat loser? I'm like, oh gosh, I've ruined her.
That's awesome.
If you're enjoying this podcast and would like to learn more about what you can do at home to take control of your health, check out our book. It's an Amazon bestseller. It's called Fear No Food. It's written by myself and Dr. Abood. You can get it at fearnofoodbook.com, or you can find it on Amazon by just typing in Fear No Food, Dan Lemoyne.
Okay, so different parts, which is really, really beautiful.
Yeah. So the part about food is really just defining, like, because I think a lot of people have a lot of disordered thoughts and behaviors around food, and they don't know that it's disordered because it's so prevalent, and it's so prevalent to be modeled, right, by parents. And so I wanted to give people just an overview of like this as a registered dietitian, having seen so many people that are disordered with food. This is what I believe is peaceful. This is when you know that you have peace with food. And so really instructing people on kind of what that definition is. And then if they don't find that that's their behavior around food, these are some things that you can do. And so some of my tools and tricks, like all of my guidelines that I would just start with clients, like if you're not eating breakfast, how about eating some yogurt for breakfast? Like start there, right? And then add some berries, and then add some granola, and like get to the point where you're eating something substantial in the morning to start your day. If you're binge eating at night and just eating dinner, you work your way back. How about a snack in the afternoon? Then how about lunch? And again, kind of working with this very safe foods first that don't feel scary. So that's the food piece. And then movement is just any kind of exercise. I think the exercise industry is so wonderful in many ways, and also so toxic in many ways, just like the diet industry. And so just breaking down, like, what is your relationship with movement? Do you feel like you have to do it? Do you feel like you have to earn your food? Do you feel like you're, you're lazy if you don't exercise for 3 days? Or like, what is your inner dialogue around moving your body? Do you never do it because you feel like you're too overweight to do it? Like, what is going on for you in your relationship with food? And understanding movement is movement, right? There are different movements that can give us different results, but if you don't move at all, or if you move for the wrong reasons, we have to kind of undo some of that and get to a point where you are joyfully moving your body, because we're supposed to move. And it's so, I mean, the benefits of it are so wonderful.
It is medicine.
It's medicine. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And so, and then the rest part was
but
super
it's medicine. And I think it is worth noting there is that it's like people, I think, want to like, well, what should I be doing? It's like, well, how do you want to move? That's like my number one question back is like, what do you like to do? What's fun for you?
Because, do you like basketball?
Because it's like, well, my husband says I need to be going and doing this, this, and this. And it's like, do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Like,
because if you don't want to, you're going to go 3 times and then you're going to be like,
you're gonna hurt yourself.
I hate this.
I hate this. Exactly.
Yeah. So what do you, and it's that intuition, right? It's that, and we can say that about food too. Like there's guidelines, there's nutrition science that we know, and then everybody has preference, right? And we work around that. And then we know all the things about movement, but then everybody has preference. You like pickleball, like join a league, right? And then you'll go twice a week and you'll have a blast, right? So, and then the other piece is rest. And I think this was, this kind of caught me off guard because I was like, I need to talk about this, but I loved talking about it a lot more than I thought I was going to. And I love having conversations with my clients about it because we don't think about rest as something that we really need to do a lot of. And just the idea, even just like biblically, of the Sabbath and taking a full day off of any sort of money-making activity where you let your brain rest. And I've had so many fun conversations with people. I have a client right now who has a very busy job, very demanding, and she took a trip a few months ago and got super sick. And she was like, Kristen, every time I like go on vacation, I get sick because I just completely crash. Yeah. And she's like, I can't do this anymore, but I'm single. I have to keep my job. Like I stopped working on Sundays, and it was so fun. She came back like 2 months later and she's like, I am getting more done in 6 days than I am in 7, like than I've ever gotten done in 7. Yeah. And it's that principle of like, we have to stop chopping the wood and sharpen our axe. Yeah. We have to sharpen our tools. We have to rest. We have to sleep. We have to enjoy our life in order to show up on Monday morning and be ready to go. Yeah.
I mean, the gentleman that I was talking to when you came in, his wife's terminally ill and he's stuck weight wise. So, he was sharing a little bit of his story, and it's like, man, is now the right time to be trying to like lose weight. You're like you got a year and a half to just go live life, you know?
It's such a good perspective just to give him freedom.
Yeah. And then it's like, man, like you're under so much stress. Like I'm not surprised.
Your
just
cortisol
in this,
levels
yeah,
are
just
so
this 4-minute conversation at the front desk.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, like there's other things at play than just calories in, calories out here.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think it's so easy just to kind of segment, I just need to eat less and exercise more and it'll take care of itself. It's like, well, let's take a more holistic approach, which you do. You talk about combining, the nutrition, the science, psychology, and then the scriptural side of things. And even if you're not a Christian, I feel like living within these kind of like, how we would say you're created to be. There's benefits of living within the bounds of creation versus saying like I'm limitless. I need to just grind
for sure
24/7. And
for sure. Yeah. It's really cool to even just taking a page out of like the 12 steps, like, and just talking about God as like a higher power, right? Or like the God of your understanding, right? So even if, somebody isn't a Christian, but they can say like, I do believe there's something out there that's, that's higher, because a big part of healing in every way is just surrender and saying, I can't do this by myself. I don't have all the answers, and I'm going to invite a creator. I'm the creation. There is a creator. I'm going to invite the wisdom of my creator to come in whatever form and fashion that may be. And it's so cool because I do have clients who are not believers, who are not Christians necessarily, but they do have a spiritual aspect of their lives. They do believe in God, and he shows up anyway. Right. Yeah. Faithful.
Yeah. We had Dr. Dan Wool, who's a naturopath, on the podcast, and he was just talking about like getting back to like factory settings and like allowing your body. And it's like, whatever you believe as far as, God, higher power, it's like we all can agree that like our bodies have this innate ability to heal. And, figuring out how do we get back and like rest and let our nervous system rest and get it what the nutrition it needs and remove certain things, add certain things, has a massive impact.
Totally.
I saw this article the other day. It was sent from TrueMed, which is a partner we use for HSA, FSA stuff. And it was not even an article. It just said 275 studies that prove that sleep, movement, and nutrition are medicine.
Yes.
And I'm like, this is amazing. I'm going to be referencing this all the time.
Yeah, it is. It's so cool. Yeah. It's simpler. It's more complex than we make it out to be sometimes. And it's also more simple.
So one of the things that typically, we can help people navigate, but we'll oftentimes, be like our red flag to like, hey, you should probably go talk to somebody like Kristen, is around like, is the in between the ear stuff, the like body image, relationship with food. And you have this really wonderful, what is it? We call it graph.
Spectrum.
You call it body hatred to peace. And can you walk me through that? Because it really at the top, it's like body hatred all the way down to peace, and kind of every, would you call it a step or a phase?
Sure.
Between the two of those.
Yeah. So the first step is just being honest about where you are. Do you hate your body? Like, if you hate your body, let's talk about it. We're not going to, there's no toxic positivity that, is happening in my office. So
do you often find that it's like hatred of my body in general, or it's like I hate a part of my body or dislike a part of my body?
It's actually usually never about their bodies.
Oh, really? What's it about then?
It's about their needs not being met.
Okay. So when I call myself a skinny fat loser, what do I just?
So you might be struggling. I don't know. Go ask Danae for a hug. I don't know.
Danae, more hugs.
Oh gosh, yes. So it's usually most of the issues that I find that my clients have are really not about food, and they're really not about the body.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to walk around hating themselves. That's not what we were designed to do. That's not our nature, right? Our nature is for connection. It's to be loved. It's to have unity. It's to be at peace. That's what we were created for. And so to get back to that, what does that look like to really uncover, okay, why do you hate your body? And it probably does come out many times, Dan, as, well, I'm too big. My body's too big. Okay. Why? How do you know your body's too big? Well, everybody tells me that. Who's everybody? Right. And then it gets down to my grandfather always told me he was never interested in me outside of, are you dieting? Have you lost any weight? And so it usually is.
That's real. Like,
oh, for real. Yeah. Not my story.
Granddad, meet you out back with your cup.
I know, right?
Like, let's go.
But I've had a client, this is, I'm just thinking about client stories because the story is where the magic happens, right? So I get to know someone, they trust me enough to tell me their story. And then I'm like, ooh, girl, I would hate my body too. If I had a a primary caretaker in my life who never had a relationship with me outside of how disgusting he felt my body was. Right? Like, of course, she's going to struggle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, she's going to go to food for comfort and solace, and because it's easy, right? And she's not doing drugs, or she's not looking at, porn, or like all the other things that are out there. Like,
she's medicating with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's medicating with food. And so, so I really look at the story, and I really, in conjunction with, right? And as we talk about like the grief behind, like as I invite her, and her therapist would be a part of this too, as we invite her as a team to grieve the losses that come with a primary caretaker not giving two rips about anything else in her life, right? And how profound that is on a person's development. For her to like release that, let go, there is a weight that comes off of somebody that you can't even measure when that happens. And then she can stop binging, and then she can start enjoying food. And now we're having breakfast and lunch and a snack and dinner, and there's no eating after dinner. And now she's going to play pickleball twice with friends a week, and she very slowly starts to lose weight, right? Or very slowly comes back to just a place of homeostasis where she actually doesn't hate her body. And eventually she can say, I really appreciate my body. Or, I really love my body.
Yeah.
I really love how it's helped me survive and what I'm able to do now as an adult.
Yeah.
Right?
And then even if she were to pursue a health goal or a weight loss goal, that's a much more powerful starting point than this place of shame.
It means so much more than I have to get my grandfather's approval or I hate him and I can't even go there, right? Because sometimes people can't even go there. So it's usually not about the body. It's usually about a need that wasn't met. It's usually about a trauma that happened in their life. It's usually not, I hate the taste of hamburgers and it's usually about, I'm scared that if I eat things like that, first of all, I won't be able to control myself. I'll go out of control. I'll lose, I'll gain weight. And then all the things that were threatened as a child, because I constantly heard my mom say that she hated herself. I constantly saw my dad say like, yeah, you should probably slim down a little bit. I constantly saw these confirmations of this fear that I have, that I am only as good as what I look like.
Yeah.
Of course you don't want to eat hamburgers.
Totally. Yeah.
So it's not about food, and it's really not about the body. And that's the funnest part about my job.
Yeah. I just had a very similar conversation with a loved one of mine, and this person was talking about somebody else in their life who needed to lose weight and all their ideas on how that needed to happen. I'm like, you're not understanding, like that weight is a symptom of something else.
Greater,
and like
deeper.
It goes way deeper than just like he shouldn't or shouldn't do this. And it's like, there's something else. And like, until you're willing to like be okay with that person being that way and loving them unconditionally, and then maybe playing the part of, a curious loved one who's just like,
just praying for them. Like that's what I would tell that loved one. Like, we know that this is not the issue. It's way deeper than that. Go there. Like in your time of thought and prayer for that person, like pray for that area, because until that is comforted and until that is brought out into the light, you can do whatever you want to do, and it's not going to make a big difference.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
There is something you've said to me in the past that I think at first I know where your heart is. And so I think I agree with you. But at the first blush, on the surface, I disagree wholeheartly. You say like food is amoral. There's no good or bad food. Convince me of your ways.
Well, I think you're like a lot of people that hear that and think, well, but it is, right? Because there are good foods and there are bad foods. My nutrition philosophy says that there are no good, there are no bad. And that doesn't mean that the food is not different. That means that I am not better. That means that I do not gain morality from eating a certain way. Yeah. That's really what food being amoral really means to me. It's not taking away the science that we know, because we have a brain, right? We each have a brain to know that but a hamburger is different in many ways than a grilled chicken salad, right?
Yeah, or a hamburger from McDonald's is different than a hamburger you make at home with like real beef.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's where, and even like the concept of intuitive eating is sometimes shamed too, because there's this there's this concept of like, well, if food is food is food and it's just neutral and I can eat whatever I want, I can just eat intuitively. There is this perspective of like, well, then I would just eat only foods that are high calorie, high salt, high sugar. And I come at that very differently because I've seen so many people heal and I've seen so many people become restored to what they were like they've always been with food. And that is just a normal, natural, intuitive eater, where most things that do have a lot of nutrient density are what we actually really want most of the time, you know? Like if we're really at the center of like how we were created to eat, most of us would say outside of, like we have a few cultural things, we have a few preferences, but like for the most part, most of us were just designed to eat well, right? Yeah. Because God made us and he's incredibly intelligent. And so it's not that there's no difference in foods. It's just that we can't be better based on, like, I'm not righteous based on how I eat, right? Nobody is.
Yeah. That's exactly what as
we
I've
agree.
gotten to know you.
We totally agree.
We totally do. Yeah. Cause I mean, I think it's inarguable that like like an engineered chip that is meant to feel so light and airy, but it's just like hollow calories and you can't just have one. You literally have to have, we had Dr. Dan on and he was talking about this book he read where like they had like sound scientists making sure the crunch was a certain decibel because it was more addictive is not as good as like celery or whatever.
The cool part is,
but like you said, like if we're passing out moral indictments to other people or ourselves based on what I ate or didn't eat, that's where you get into like really sticky, like inner dialogue that is just destructive.
And the cool part is that addictive crunch it has no effect on people who are at peace with food. Like you can do any sort of sound decibel that you want to, but if I am truly in tune to what my body needs and wants, I'm going to eat 4 or 5 potato chips on the side of my sandwich and be like, I think I'm good.
Yeah. I mean, we all have been there. Like for anybody who's like, well, I just can't control myself after dinner. It's like, okay, well, there's been times when you have controlled yourself and usually it's when you had a less stressful day or it's like I had a really well-balanced dinner. Like I know when I have a really awesome meal for dinner, I'm not hungry at all until the next morning.
And when you've eaten well throughout the day beforehand, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also looking at like, oh my gosh, I'm super hungry after dinner. What happened? Not judging that, but trying to do the best that you can if you are still hungry and trying to continue to honor your body, having a snack that's really nutrient dense, that's protein dense instead of, something else. Or if you do have something, if you're like, Danae, I just want to go out and get some ice cream tonight, not letting that ruin anything because it hasn't, So.
Which is what I did the other day with Andy's. So I've got like this terrible back issue. I'm like, I need to medicate with a little bit of like Andy's ice cream, and not feel guilty about it. And I didn't. It was wonderful. Use code Dan at Andy's for 10% off. Fear no food. So there's, how, because we do oftentimes see here in our practice, somebody's like, they'll come in with their spouse and I'll always like try to lighten the mood where I'm like, blink twice if you're here under duress, like, and most of the time it's very unified, but you do run into these things where it's like, hey, my husband really wants me to be here. And I'm like, well, do you want to be here? And they're like, yes, but it's like, how do you tell a loved one or hint or like without destroying them or traumatizing them, that like, hey, it doesn't seem like we're healthy or like, you don't want to destroy their body image, but is there what would you say there?
You come from a place of love and concern. You don't come from an accusatory place or a judgmental place. You say, I am concerned that some of the things that you're doing are not as healthy. And even kind of pointing it back to yourself, like I have my own work to do. I'm engaging in my own work, and because I love you and I want to live a healthy life with you, I'd love for you to join me on this. And so you always come from a place of concern because that really is the heart of it, right? Yeah. It's not, nobody really wants to tear anybody down. Yeah. They want to say like, I love you. Yeah. Sometimes, but that's usually a reflection of their own issues, right?
100%.
So. Yeah.
That's good. I think that's helped me formulate like my, and in my own emotional counseling and work, there's this concept of like, love can't exist when somebody's one up or feels one up or one down. Yep. And I think what I've seen in my life, there have been moments where, within my family or broader kind of friend context where it's like, there isn't this like, hey, we're equals and I'm going to you out of concern. It's the like, what are you eating there? Exactly. And like, this weird shame. I know more than you do. Why aren't you listening to what I say? Sure. And it's like, and unfortunately it's gotten to a point where I can think of a couple folks in my life where it's like, there's been so much of that it's like, they're no longer even able to speak into that other person's life, I don't think, or they shouldn't be because there's just so much pattern of like shame or guilt or pride. Yeah. And it's like, I'm one up, you're one down. And it's like that love can't exist in that. And you see that in scripture, if we want to bring it back to the faith side of things, like Jesus engaged with people, not from a like, hey, I'm a sage on a stage. Right. You guys are all terrible. It's like, I'm entering into humanity. Right. I'm with you guys.
As your brother.
Yeah. And we're here. And that's where love can exist.
Sure. For sure.
But that's helpful. Just like coming from a place of concern and also like recognizing that like, I'm on my own journey too. And I would love for you to be on this with me.
Yeah. And respecting when they don't want to come.
What are some signs that somebody might have an unhealthy relationship with food or exercise, that might not kind of be presenting as like a full blown eating disorder, but that like either I could recognize in myself or sometimes obviously these things are easier to recognize in other people than ourselves, but what are some of those things that you see? Yeah.
So the food noise that we talked about would be one of them. Like how much time in your day is spent talking or thinking, right? About food, about dieting, about weight loss, about body image, about exercise. I think a lot of people spend a tremendous amount of time thinking about those things and they don't realize it because it's just what they do. Yeah. Right. And so how much time are you spending thinking about it? Are you distracted from other kind of noble things like asking people about who they are, asking about your loved ones? Are you distracted from work? Are you distracted, are you
distracted from noble things? I love that.
Yeah. Are you distracted from playing with your kids because you're thinking about how many calories you ate at lunch?
I'm thinking about that with like my back pain right now, which now everybody knows about. I got to tell everybody about it. I've like made some really good friends, like bonding over back pain. But it's like, common. It's like this thing where I'm like, I have to get this solved because it is distracting me from nobler things. Yeah. Like it is impacting my life. And I have to imagine it's like, if you're constantly in your head about,
Yeah.
I remember talking to one of the women who edited our book. She was like, she's like, I walk into a room and I'm always looking at what chairs will I fit in? Will I break this chair or not? And I'm just like, oh my gosh, my heart is breaking. It's like, that isn't any way to live.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think looking at the food noise for sure. I think looking at the emotional impact that food and body image is taking, the emotional and mental impact. And what I mean by that is, are you avoiding going out to dinner because you don't know what's going to be on the menu? Do you not go to someone's house because you are not willing to eat something that someone else has cooked? When you come home from work and your husband has already made dinner, did you freak out because you don't know how much butter he put in it? If you're not getting pictures, if you're not getting into family photos.
We hear that a lot. That's like oftentimes like an inciting issue where it's like, I didn't want to go to the pool party and this was like a really big party. Or like I didn't want to.
Or I won't swim with my kids. You know, like it really gets me as a mom when moms are like, I can't get into a bathing suit. And I'm like, why? Yeah. Why? Like I get it. I get that you're not comfortable. And also before you get to the perfect weight or even if you never do, because perfect is so elusive. Sure. And it's like how much.
Because the moment you get there, the Kardashians say that's not that anymore. It's over here.
Exactly.
You want a small butt, you want a big butt.
Yes, exactly.
Go to Brazil.
It's always changing, right? And even if it's not like cultural influences, it's our own perception of like, I have to get that need met somehow, and I have to look a certain way. Maybe that'll do it. It's a spiritual battle, right? Every time. And so, that really gets me as a mom. Like,
I think too, like if I could just jump in, like the one of those things that you told me that I think about often, and I think I've actually learned from going when I was first going through our program. Dr. Abood took me to like a donut shop, and those are not on the menu. Right. Just if anybody's wondering, during the first 40 days of our anti-inflammatory, those are not anti-inflammatory. Yeah. And he's like, hey, we go get some coffee. And it was a test. I knew what he was doing. And I'm like, it was just really freeing to be like, I don't have to get a donut in here, even if like the girl's like, this is all you want is coffee. Or like, can you go to your mom's house and not eat the baked goods that she made?
Sure.
Can you give yourself permission to say no?
Yeah.
Can you also give yourself permission to say, it's like why I gave up alcohol. It was like, I feel like I needed to exercise my no muscle.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that of just,
I think there's a time and a place. I think it's more intuitively that I would recommend doing that, you know.
But like, I guess, sorry, maybe I didn't phrase the question correctly. Like with this idea of like, are you not going to somebody's house because you didn't know? Like, why couldn't you still go to that party or that house and just not eat what they had? Is that a bad behavior to not do that, or
I would probably
to be eating out of like social pressure?
Sure, I would probably recommend them working up to actually going and eat. I mean, that's the goal my goal for my clients is to be able to go and meet their nutritional needs in whatever setting they're in.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So if you still want to go, especially if it's a family member, if it's somebody who knows what's going on and you're not there yet, then bring your own food. Right. But eventually we'd want to get to a place where you can just go and
fear no food
and
you enjoy things.
And there's not even a thought. Like that's the cool part is when my clients will go, I went to a pool party and I knew there was going to be food there. Yes. I knew exactly like when we were invited, oh yeah, we'll just eat lunch there. But then I didn't even think about it. Right. Yeah. It's not that, oh, I thought about it, but it, I went anyway. Cause that's kind of the first, first move. But then like, I didn't even think about it. And when I saw it, there was this huge table full of food and I was able to breathe, concentrate on like, on calming my nervous system. And then taking a plate and just making a balanced meal out of it, right? And enjoying it and then going in the pool and that's peace, right? That's the absence of turmoil. And that is the goal.
Yeah. Yeah. That is the goal. I love that. And I think it's doubly hard. I'm sure I love your thoughts on this, but it's like, you have all your stuff in the past that shows up with our relationship with food and body image. And then you have social media and like, yes, there's the body image side of stuff, but more than that, I'm like right now, at least in my world, it's like nothing's safe anymore. I can't drink water because there's mold in it that makes you fat. You can't have this. Oh, kale, that's off the menu now because there's too many oxalates and I'm probably going to die if I eat it. And it's like, oh my gosh, like talk about food noise where like everything I thought was healthy isn't. And you just get to a point where, I don't want to be constantly thinking about like what's going to be at this person's house and they don't maybe ascribe to the same like thoughts about food that I do. It's like, it's not going to kill me to have one. And it is to get to that place of peace. It is so worth the work to get there. Yeah,
it is. I think it's very overwhelming just as and I saw that when I was in college because I was studying nutrition and I was like, what do I believe? Like, how do I navigate all of this as a human being for myself? And then also like, how do you practice when there's like constant, information coming at you? And that is the age that we live in. And also there are some things that are just constant, right? And that's what I try to always go back to. Okay, what's constant? Constant is we need to be eating consistently. We need to be listening to our bodies. Our bodies have not changed because we live now in 2025 and there are new diets out there. There's new research. Like my needs have not changed. The overall basis of healthy nutrition has not changed. Eat lots of colorful things. Eat lots of plant-based foods. Most of the food that you eat should be like, unprocessed and whole and also like the little that you do eat of delicious processed food that's all the wrong colors, that are unnatural. Like let yourself have those on occasion and intuitively without any guilt. But so the basis and the foundation of
you like a Venn diagram, all of them, like whole food,
exactly.
Minimally processed.
There's a bigger, if you Venn diagram all of them, there is a bigger like wisdom sweet spot than all of the noise out here. And that's just what I have to go back to.
Yeah, totally. It's like if you see the guy telling you not to eat broccoli and to be afraid of broccoli because it might mess up your thyroid, like just keep scrolling.
Just keep going.
I promise you, nobody is getting chronically ill and overweight from broccoli or somebody who's like, oh, fruit makes you fat. It's like
exactly,
or you can't drink coffee because your cortisol spikes.
Exactly.
You're like, dude, F you.
I'm going to drink coffee. Thank you very much. But I'm going to drink 1 cup a day. Right. And I'm going to eat broccoli, but I'm going to eat it a few times a month.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Because I think that's really the basis of just balanced and wisdom with nutrition is that we don't want to swing one way or the other with anything.
Thanks for listening. This podcast is brought to you by Revitalize Weight Loss and Wellness. It's unfortunate that we've been led to believe that significant weight loss results can't be sustainable, and to be sustainable, it has to take forever. At Revitalize, we've proven out through research and real-world experience that a combination of high-quality coaching, high-quality supplements, and a customized nutrition plan is really the key to seeing significant results in the short term and being able to sustain those results through metabolic empowerment over the long term. If you'd like to find out more about how we've helped over 11,000 people lose weight and keep it off, check us out at the link below or at revitalizeweightloss.com.
You take this faith-based approach with it, which I think is beautiful. And I think regardless of what your kind of faith convictions are or where you're coming from, there's just so much good stuff in the book and the work you're doing. But like for somebody who may not have a strong faith background, you kind of hit on this already, but how can, I mean, I think it's probably pretty obvious, but how can somebody still benefit from this approach of thinking about their soul and how like the body and the soul inform each other?
Yeah, I think the way that they can think about it is just to pay attention to their emotions and think, okay, if I am a spiritual being, regardless of what I believe, and I'm taking care of my spiritual being. So I am thinking of like, there's something greater than myself, right? And I can operate out of that without ascribing to any sort of faith denomination. That would look like asking for help, right? Like, God, if you're there, whoever you are, wherever you are, like, I need some help with this, and seeing the help come. And I say that with confidence because I know that will happen, right? And so seeing the help come, seeing the wisdom come, seeing their faith grow in that, I think, but also accomplishing what they want to do, which is to find peace with food, movement, rest, and body image, right? To find a place where I feel a lot more calm in my body. I feel a lot more calm around food. I feel a lot more joyful when I move. I feel a lot more calm when I look in the mirror because I'm not looking to my body anymore to meet the needs that my body can never meet. Yeah. Right? I'm looking to food to nourish me and fuel me, not to make me feel righteous or not to make me feel calm, right? It is calming to eat because you're meeting a need, but you're meeting a hunger need, not a soul need, right? You're meeting a physical body need. So I think if, regardless of where people are in their faith, they can just pay attention to, how do I feel when I give this over? How do I feel when I pray, even though I don't know who I'm praying to? But just really surrendering this and seeing the pieces fall into place. Because I think surrender is the path to peace. It's not giving up. It's not saying I can't do this. I'm a loser. I can't figure this out. It's giving it over to something greater than ourselves and saying, I need help with this. There's wisdom out there that I don't have. And all of us can say that, right? Yeah. All of us can say, I still have things that I need to learn. So God, whoever you are, right? Will you please help me to learn these things? And will you please bless me with peace in this area? Because I need it. Yeah,
man. If I'm going to like sum up, and feel free to correct me if you don't feel like this is in line, but one of the things the thing that I think I love about your approach is that it's like, hey, this isn't all your fault. It's not just so deterministic, individual, like you're here because you made all these bad decisions. It's like, let's be realistic about your past and maybe a broken food system and like all of the things, but you're not helpless. Right. And like, there are things that we can do to own this story, to be in control of this and have a path to getting you to a place where you are at peace. And I think that's really beautiful and is often missed when we're just looking for clicks and we're putting stuff out on social media, et cetera. Which if you're watching the social media, clicks, like, subscribe. But in all seriousness, it's like, yes, how do we be very realistic about what has happened and that it might not all be your fault, but you can take extreme ownership of this in a really healthy way. You look at someone's story with utmost compassion and respect and you go, that makes a lot of sense. I would be doing the same things that you're doing if I had gone through that. Totally. And then you change it over to the self-responsibility because we all have so much more power than we think we do. And it really is, okay, you can't change grandfather, right? You can't change that part of the story, but you can forgive him and you can release him and you can forgive yourself for all of the things that you did while you were trying to cope with all that pain. And then you can choose differently today. So it is a truly compassionate, empathetic,
standpoint that is combined and married to self-responsibility. And
are we even talking about food anymore?
I know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that you can do anything, right? You can do anything when you look at life that way. So it's really, it's hearing their story. It's going, I'm so sorry. And you are so powerful. Are you ready to make some changes?
Yeah, let's go. Yeah. Well, that's a great place to end. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been awesome. I know that our listeners are going to love this. Where can people get the book? Where can they find out more about your work?
Yeah, you can get Feed My Soul anywhere where you buy books online. And I work in Glendale, Arizona, in an office there, but I also do virtual sessions too. So phone, Zoom. My website is bodyandsoulnutritioncounseling.com, and it's Kristen Bunger RD on Instagram.
Cool. Thank you so much, Kristen.
Thank you.
This is great.
Thank you. So happy to be here.